Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Cinematic Realms. I'm your host, John Webster. That's right. And next to me is my co-host and fellow cinephile, Amy Blackfire. And we are joined by the Night's Queen herself, Geaullie. Welcome. How are you doing today?
All hail, all hail.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm doing fine. I slept a lot today, so I would be ready for this live stream. So
I don't know anything about that because I absolutely don't spend most of my time sleeping. I don't do that. What?
Our dear guest is doing us a solid by allowing us to keep our normal stream time and not having to move it up for Euro-friendly time. She said, "You know what? I'll just nap through the day." She's our trooper, and we're so glad to have her for this stream. Thanks so much for being with us, Geaullie.
Yeah, thank you. It's like I really liked the movie, so I was like, yeah, kind of want to do that.
Yeah, and I think this was very much one of the movies that we wanted to talk about. So it just worked out that you wanted to go for this one. And we were talking about this a bit before the stream that I was watching this today, and of course we had the news here in America, some really sucky news that was expected, but nonetheless sucks. And right in the middle while I was watching this, it just added a whole nother layer to my viewing, and I was incensed by it. But yeah, before we get too far into all that, though, just want to give you a chance, Geaullie, because I mean, I know it's most of our friends watching, but for any people who aren't watching, what is it that you do? I know you have your own YouTube channel. Just go ahead and tell the folks a bit about, about yourself and what they can find there.
Okay, yeah. Well, I am All Hail Night's Queen. I started a YouTube channel because I had a couple of two theories that I really wanted to get out there, and I thought they were underrepresented in the fandom, so I decided to just go ahead with it and do that. I didn't want my face on camera that much, but I was like, okay, well, I need to do that if I want to get my theory out. And yeah, and I'm trying to do like a pseudo monthly live stream about like big topics within A Song of Ice and Fire that we can discuss like in an informal way and have people participate in those discussions. And I really like that, and I hope that I'll have another one soon.
Pseudo monthly. That sounds nice. Why didn't I think of that?
And Geaullie's been on my channel talking about one of her theories about the shade of the evening, and we had also Amanda, aka Crowfoot's daughter, and Archmaester Emma on as well. So we had a really great time. That was my first panel on my channel. Hey, that rhymed. And so I was so glad to have my I call Geaullie my big sis, and so I was glad to have my big sis on my channel. That was really fun.
Yeah. Well, it feels kind of necessary that you need to be on all of our channels, Geaullie, because most people here know, but for those who don't know, we have a never-ending Zoom call, and you are the resident queen of said Zoom call because you are pretty much always on there. So it's only fair that you should be a guest on all of our channels.
Oh, thanks.
But yeah, it's so funny, and I know everybody's heard this story before, but when we first started doing the Zoom calls in our Slack group, it was we do it like sometimes it was every week, and then sometimes we were like, okay, we should take a break this week. We'll just chill out and relax, and then we'll all get together again next weekend. And then so we would have records, like we would stay up late, and it's like, oh, who can last the longest on Zoom? That pretty much all stopped when you joined in, Geaullie, because you're always on, and none of us can compete with you. So
I have a bit of a competitive streak. it's a thing. I grew up with a little sister who's 2 years younger than me, so we always were very competitive. So that
Yeah. Well, it's great because it's turned into this thing where we all just kind of, there's always somebody on, usually it's you, but there's, usually other people just going in and out. So if, somebody's like, is there anybody who wants to talk on Zoom for a couple minutes, and we just jump on, and it's great. I think it's brought us all closer together. So
it's a bit of a clubhouse.
Yeah.
You can all come in and then just talk to each other. It's fun. I like it. Also, I don't like typing, so the whole chatting thing was not my it's not my thing. So I was like, oh, Zoom, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So. Meanwhile, and which is funny because, like, by your own admission, like as far as the YouTube channel thing goes, you don't want to be on camera, and Zoom is a very, we can hide our faces, but it's, it's on camera medium. I know that I'm much more comfortable typing from behind a keyboard, but no, it is great. And yeah, so it's just one of those things that's become a key function of our Slack group, and I love it. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I guess I shouldn't say anything because we're not supposed to be getting that never-ending Zoom. There I go. I said it again. I'll stop now. Anyway, so going into this movie, so I can get off of that topic. Yeah. So, Geaullie, why don't you just tell us, why did you pick this movie? Why was this the one that you wanted to talk about?
Well, I studied history for a while, and I wasn't really into modern history before I studied history, and then I started getting into like modern history and the civil rights movement and all types of civil rights movements around the world. I was also intrigued because like I don't know anything of the Black experience in the United States. My grandfather was a Black man from the United States. I don't know his name. I don't know anything about him. So I was kind of drawn to the civil rights movement in the United States and Black history. Yeah, because like part of like my ethnic background is comes from the United States as well, and I'm fascinated by the civil rights movement, and I read a lot about it in university. So yeah, so I really was drawn to this movie because this march is one of the pivotal moments in the civil rights movement, and it's so important because it's still you still have a lot of racial disparities within the United States and around the world, because like Europe is not different if it comes to that. But the violence is a lot less here than in the United States. So yeah, I just really wanted to be on for this movie.
Yeah, AK is going to be joining us next week, so be sure you guys tune in for that.
Yes, we're very excited for that.
Yeah,
and she picked something I haven't seen, so that's
fun. Me either. That's going to be great. Yeah, I did see this film when it came out, albeit on home video. I actually missed it in theaters, unfortunately. I was somewhat amazed by how much more of an impact it had on me on this viewing. I'm not entirely sure why that is, but part of it I think might be that when it came out, it was 2014, so we were actually still in the Obama years, and I think there's something that for someone, especially for someone from a privileged point of view like me, is you tended to think of in those years that we had progressed to a certain point, and there was a confidence in that, and then over the past several years you've seen that we haven't necessarily progressed as much as we like to think we have. And so I think a lot of this film hit even harder than it did back when I saw it. And as I was saying before, we got the news of that former president's, I won't say his name, acquittal today, and I got an alert on my phone right as I was in the middle of watching this film, and just seeing expected news, but still getting that while in the midst of watching a lot of the stuff depicted in this film. It just really made me angry. But I think we need to recognize that history is not as far removed always as we like to think it is, and we need to be reminded of that.
Yeah, and the idea of progress as linear is actually a colonialist Western concept that is completely incorrect. You can easily go back. You can take one step forward and 5 steps back. I think anything 2016 taught us that. And so I think that when I watched this movie, and especially the confrontations at the bridge, when there's this symbol of white power in the form of the troops, and the way that they say this is an unlawful assembly, what can be more lawful than wanting your right to vote? I mean, so then when we have what we had, and I hate to keep making this political, but how can you not? What we had on January 6th, that was an unlawful assembly, but it was allowed to go, they were allowed to go really, really far because they were mostly white. Actually, like pretty much, I saw like one black guy in that whole thing. And so there's this kind of assumption that people of color are making a fuss or are wanting to cause trouble, whereas white people are just protesting and demonstrating. And I think that becomes more clear when we see the Black Lives Matter movement, the Black Lives Matter is in many ways the successor of the civil rights movement. No matter how demonized they are now, it's the same demonization of what we saw the civil rights movement. And I actually saw this in theaters with my mom, and it brought back memories for her of when she saw it happening on TV. And she remembers her dad telling her, I don't know why they're making so much trouble, blaming the people of color, when it was the white cops that were beating them and tear gassing them. Old women, young men, all ages, all different sexes, all different backgrounds were being beaten. And we see that that one scene in the movie where the young man brings his mom and his mom and his grandfather into the diner. They should have been safe, and then to be shot like that scene alone shows you that there's no winning with white supremacists.
Yeah, and especially if you look at it now, after all the George Floyd protests, and how the people there were villainized on TV, on a lot of TV stations, and then juxtapose that to the storming of the Capitol, the insurrection at the Capitol, and how they are treated, and how the instigators are not punished as they should be, and how and if you put that if you look at that, and then you look at how people from the civil rights movement and the Black Lives Matter movement, which is also a civil rights movement, get treated, that is very telling.
And the way that the cops interact with the protesters is extremely different. The footage we've seen is of a cop opening the door saying, you can't come in, you can't come in. It's almost satire. really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to step back for a second, and something that you just said, Amy, that you don't mean to keep making this political. This is a political film, and I say it's political film, but it's like the point I want to make is when you say I don't mean to keep making this political. It's like that's not a political conversation. That's a basic
Human rights.
Rights conversation. I always get frustrated.
And this was a political fight because they wanted to be able to vote. That is politics. So we really can't separate that.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I say I don't mean to get on my soapbox, but if not for this film, then when else? But I've often heard when it comes to conversations like this, especially on the internet, it's like, well, we don't want to have political conversations here on this message board or that message board. And it's like, this is like one side, fighting for their rights and another side saying you don't have that right. That's a political conversation. That's not a, sort of basic fundamental human rights conversation. I continually find it infuriating. So yeah, it's like, I guess my point being, fire away because we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, it is made a political conversation by right-wing people who want to stop people from having rights that everyone else has. Like, it should not be a political conversation. It should be a human rights, it should be a conversation for humanity, but they made it political. And they set people against each other, and it is for power and for nothing else. And yeah, so that conversations become political is not the fault. Like, it's not the issue. It is the politicians who want to fight dirty over it. So yeah.
And the politicians make the policy, and we see in the movie how those policies are inherently against voting rights of people of color, right? They have that. One of my favorite scenes is when they're arguing about what should be their main focus, and someone says the poll tax, right? And I think another person said, I forget what the other person said, but then a third person said, no, it's the vouchers. You can't even get in the door to apply. Oh, the second person said that they would, if a person of color went in to attempt to register, they would put your name and address in the paper. So there were those two.
Yep.
And the third person said, no, you can't even get through the door unless someone who is registered to vote comes in and vouches for you. And in a community where you wouldn't know any white people, and what white person is going to go vouch for you? Well, basically every single black person is not being able to get in the door in the first place because they need someone to vouch for them. So there's this constant roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And intimidation. Intimidation is, you see in the movie how people white supremacists standing on the sidelines are waving the Confederate flag, which I'm from the South, and I always hear the rhetoric of it's, our heritage. No, it's used as an intimidation factor. It's to remind you, I could put you back in your place. Don't you get too comfortable.
Well,
and so that's the intimidation factor.
It's their heritage, but then there's a question of, so what are you saying your heritage is exactly?
Yeah, it is
losing.
Their race.
That's what your heritage is.
Yeah, it was their racist heritage, and yes, it has heritage, but it's also, it stands for racial inequality and the wish to continue owning black people.
Yeah, I mean, it would be weird if a German person said that the Nazi flag was a sign of their heritage. I mean, come on, it's this. I can't believe we even have these conversations anymore. It's disgusting.
In Germany, you get arrested because you can't have Nazi memorabilia.
Which I think after the Civil War, they should have done that. The Union should have done that same thing.
Well, and
long
it's
time
funny
ago.
because that is like this whole American thing of the quote unquote lost cause, myth and all that. It's even when I was younger, I sort of fell victim to, falling into, like hearing about that sort of mythology that's spread around. And I was a big fan of Civil War history, and I still am. But, when you, through like film and, different mediums, and you hear this sort of myth of the Civil War of, of two different sides and all that. And I think it was when somebody actually, and so I always tried to have like this almost middle of the road view growing up of the Civil War. And then somebody said to me, you wouldn't be okay with somebody waving around a Nazi flag and, and saying that there's, two sides to that. I'm like, you're right. You're absolutely right. And it's this weird, like pro-American thing that we seem to be okay with championing, half the country's heritage, even though that heritage is utterly despicable. So yeah, it's messed up the way we view that in this country and the way we then teach that chapter of our history.
And I know that you live in the South now, John, but didn't grow up there. I did grow up in the South, and this kind of like romanticism around the antebellum era is really disgusting. And it's, there's still members of my family that have it. We fight all the time at Thanksgiving and Christmas. One good thing about Rona, I was like, can't come, guys. Oh, too bad. Hopefully you'll see you next year.
One of, I don't mean to jump around different movies, but we were not too long ago talking about Django Unchained. And I think one of my favorite parts of them, not because it's, nice to watch, but favorite in terms of pointing out like this really disgusting, weird hypocrisy is that, they go onto the plantation and you're seeing all these slaves and stuff. And it's obvious that the character played by Don Johnson is despicable. And then like he'll turn around and turn on the Southern charm and be like, well, come on in. And it's like, so that's mythologized, this like the Southern hospitality and all that. And it's all to disguise this really disgusting truth.
No,
it's very fake. I know, because my family is Southern hospitality, and it's a very fake, because the second you don't agree with them about something or you start dating a person of color, then you're just one of them.
You have a line in the poem "Strange Fruit." It's like the pastoral scenes of the gallant South, and then you get the story about the lynched bodies and hanging from a tree. So they have that image of being nice and being being hospitable and being moral and God-fearing. And if you see those pictures of those lynchings, it's not true. The whole image that they made for themselves, like you can't have that image and then see the images of lynched people and then still believe that they're so nice.
And you see that with sundown laws as well, that if you didn't get out of a town or a county this is shown in Lovecraft Country, by a certain, by sundown, then the cops could literally shoot you, and they were justified by the law. The city, the town, it's too small to be a city. Town I come from used to be a sundown town. And, and the first, so I went to the University of Oklahoma, and the first professor there, who was a black man, he got the job there, and he told them he could not come to teach because no one would sell him a house. So so the realtor that did finally sell him a house was then shunned and lost their realtor license, actually. So, and this is all in the nice South. And so I think it's those roadblocks that are constantly there and that are constantly justified by this fake visage of a nice, quiet town. And there's even the terms that we talked about last week in about Hidden Figures, and that we see in this movie with Oprah Winfrey's character coming in and to try and register to vote, and them saying, we don't want you up here causing a fuss, right? This idea that they're causing trouble. And she says, I'm not causing a fuss, I just want to vote, right? And so they're constantly, the cops are looking for reasons to enact violence upon Black bodies. And under this tired vocabulary of they're causing trouble, which is what my mom heard growing up whenever they would watch these terrible scenes on TV or in the paper. She would hear her parents go, I don't know why they're causing trouble and causing a fuss.
Yeah, in Hidden Figures, it was, one of the characters just looking for a book in a library, and here it's a woman trying to register to vote, and just like, I'd seen the movie before, so I knew the scene I was watching, but just watching like every step of the questions, and
he could have named all of the whatever, what was it, county commissioners or judges?
Or, that's just the thing. It's a shameless roadblock.
It is.
It's knowing that it's ridiculous, and doing it.
Like naming 67 names, like that is, it's an impossible question. Like, and the enjoyment you saw on the face of that guy, enjoying the fact that he could deny her
and threatening her job as well.
That is not
threatening her livelihood.
Yeah.
God, yeah, and I'll tell you.
I think it's a good movie. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Geaullie.
Okay, I think it's good. To see those movies, also to bring it to a wider audience, but on the other hand, it's so discouraging to see Black people treated that way over and over again. The movie, it brought like a lot of tears to my eyes, and there was a lot of ugly crying going on because it is terrible. It's terrible. Terrible to see that, and it's terrible that people still don't know this history. They only see the whitewashed version, and I like that that this is there. On the other hand, I don't like that it is necessary to see all those Black people treated that way over and over again. But
yeah, and I think there is a problem, a little bit of a problem that I've heard about cinema and shows and media in general, of kind of representing the Black experience as plight constantly, and that can become tiring for people of color, and I'm absolutely sympathetic to that. But I think that, especially coming from the family that I do, where other than my parents, I really can't talk to any of them about this kind of stuff. Like, seriously, like, they just won't. They're not at all receptive to any of the things we've been talking about. These kinds of movies, if they ever were to watch them, which I doubt, but if they ever were to, they kind of do actually need that thrown in their face. Otherwise, they're going to continue to have this romanticized view of the civil rights era, as and also this view that I think a lot of them have of it was a one and done and it's over. But civil rights is a process. It's a constant fight. And I think Martin Luther King Jr. knew that. And he knew that he was just a part of a long, string of people that were going to have to fight.
Yeah. a long string, and still people are still having to fight. It's like the whole what Martin Luther King said: justice delayed is justice denied, and it's still going on. We still don't have justice for black people, innocent black people dying in much, like, percentage-wise, much greater numbers than other groups. So yeah, it is still going on, and I like it's discouraging that it takes so long. When studying history, you see that, like, a lot of changes happen, like, very slowly, but the painful fact that slow change is the change is so slow that still people are still dying for it. People are still there is like grief and pain every day that it takes for this to solve itself. That is a very painful play, and you had the song also, like Nina Simone had the song Mississippi Goddamn. She got blacklisted for making that song, but you hear her say you hear her say that it's like that every time they say go slowly, like, and every day that slow process is moving forward, it creates more pain and more devastation, and it's sad.
Waiting for things to change, is not the same as actively changing them. Which is why, we had the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and the voting rights were not in there. And that is why this march happened. And we see that very clearly in the movie, is that MLKJ was telling LBJ, dude, look, you told us in 64 this was coming. It's 65. Where is it? And it wasn't until later that year, because of marches like this, that it finally was passed. And who knows when it would have been if it would have been delayed more. And LBJ was a master of the Senate. That's where he came from. He was really brilliant at that. But when he became president, he had all of these friends in the Senate who were Southern Democrats who he thought he could reason with. And he, growing up in Texas, what his first job was teaching underprivileged kids. So he taught Black and Hispanic kids, and he was sympathetic to their cause. But I think he was also pessimistic. And I think it was Martin Luther King Jr.'s hope and inspiration that is what the movement needed, and not LBJ's more pessimistic, these guys are never going to change kind of attitude.
And actually, and as much as it is, I do agree that it's painful to watch these experiences, but also there's something very, obviously very inspiring and cathartic about watching, him have that discussion with LBJ, and, hearing the president, say, this voting thing is just going to have to wait. And how often do we hear stuff like that? And then what does, Martin Luther King Jr. do? He goes downstairs, and his words are, Selma, it is. They're going to push forward and make this happen, regardless of what the politicians are trying to push, and they accomplish great things. And so that's the other end of this. As much as it is discouraging to watch this kind of treatment, and as well as the attitudes of the very bigoted white Southerners, and not just Southerners also, but but it's the other side of that is it's inspiring to see what can be done by those who have the courage and conviction to press forward.
Yeah.
And also, AK has a great point that I'm from Oklahoma, so the Tulsa Massacre was, to me, presented much later in my life, and it was presented as the Tulsa race riot, as if the people of color were rioting, and it was a massacre of Black people, the largest one in our history, and it's been completely whitewashed or forgotten to most people.
And I did want to, it's great that she mentioned that, because I had been wanting to bring that up, as much as I shouldn't keep referring to other movies and TV shows. But God bless, Watchmen for bringing that to my attention, because, and before I even watched the show, I had seen some things online where people were saying that, some people had thought that it was, part of the fictional story, that, it wasn't something that actually happened, that it was, creation on the part of the writers, and they had to be educated that it did happen. And I would have been just as guilty because I didn't know about it, which is appalling. It's utterly ridiculous.
And I didn't know the extent of it until years later after I'd even heard about it. And I'll give it to the Scholastic Book Fair at my school. There was an Oklahoma author who came to speak to us, and she wrote a children's book about it. So obviously the ideas were there, but the gruesome details weren't. But I at least knew about it. And I was in a quote unquote more liberal town compared to a lot of other people. Most of my other Okie friends don't know about it, unless they've seen Watchmen. And another thing about LBJ, if I could, Johnson also had this war on poverty. He wanted to focus on the poor in America, and Vietnam was taking all of his energy. And he was so bitter about that then when the civil rights movement also popped up, he just became more and more bitter because he wanted to focus on his war on poverty. And the way that he kind of squared it in his head, which is not exactly right, but the way that he saw it was, if he does a war on poverty, then children of color and people of color will be bettered, and then that's his contribution. But, the fact that they couldn't vote was what this march was about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, he kind of just was seeing all of he was seeing the trees and losing the forest, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like Black people could die for the United States in Vietnam, but they couldn't vote. Like, what the hell was that about? And also, like, because of the channel and like media, because of John's channel, like media played such a big part in showing the United States the horrors of the war in Vietnam, but also the horrors that Black people went through during the civil rights movement. The bridge in Selma, that was the images that came out of there, and it was televised, and it was in every living room in the United States. That, like, you can force politicians to act by just throwing it in the face of the citizens of the United States. Like, this is happening. This is what the state is doing. This is what the state is participating in. This is what, and this is how it looks. And see the people scream and see the pain, see people dying. It helps. The media was a big part of that. It helps.
And we see a lot of scenes of that in the movie where you see them, the media talking, someone on a payphone reporting what's happening on the bridge as it happens. And so you really do see that being able to bring these stories and these images. And I really liked toward the end of the movie, they showed actual footage, because that was so different and so inspiring for people. And I also did appreciate the line, though, about whenever there was the awful incident on the bridge, and then they were planning on doing another march, and MLK did a shout out, a call to action for people to come, especially clergy. And we have that line after the second march is aborted, we have that line from, you know, a civil rights leader who was kind of frustrated because they were it looked like they could pass, but MLK didn't feel right about it, so he shut it down. So one of the civil rights leaders said, you know, these white people aren't going to stay around. They're going to go back. They always do. We should have used them while they were here. And so it does kind of highlight the fact that although they were brave for coming, and we do learn at the end of the film that one of the white women who came was killed by the KKK. And we had the white male clergyman who was also killed. They were also subjected to violence, but they weren't living the experience, basically, is kind of what I'm getting at. They could play activist for a day and then go home and be safe. Yeah. And I think that's really what this movie emphasized.
Yeah, it was also poignant that while that white clergyman was getting killed in the street, basically, that the guy, the perpetrator, said to him, like, now you know what it is, what it feels like to be black. And like that is it's a comment that reminded me of the insurrection in on the 6th of January, that, you know, the one of the guys that got arrested, like, you treating me like a black person. And it's like, they know what's happening, and they ignore it still. And that is like, I kind of like that line in the movie, because it brought like that. The point was made more obvious by that small little line in the movie.
Yeah, it's a demonstration of how hateful they are. What's said right before that is, if there's, you know, one thing we hate more than blank, it's white.
Yeah.
And the term also blank lover, I heard that growing up. That's not great. I was actually called that for standing up for people of color. There is this kind of idea that if you're with them, then you're against us. So there is no protection if you are on quote unquote us versus them, right? It's so polarized in the view of white supremacists. You're either with them or you're with us.
And that's also, it is such a strange way to think, that, you know, you're against a lot of citizens of your own country. Like, there are citizens in your own country, and you just hate them with such a ferocity that you're willing to kill them. It's crazy, but that is what white supremacy is. It's crazy.
Yeah. I just real quick, so that because I want to start focusing on some specific elements with the film itself, because this is even more so than when I saw it in 2014. I was impressed by what a remarkably, you know, amazingly well-made film this is. And I really want to give hats off to the director, Ava DuVernay, who shamefully was not nominated for an Oscar. I know
John,
you know,
being mad at the Oscars, this never happens.
Yeah, it's like, I like to go on about how much I, you know, don't care about the Oscars, but I'll always go on about the injustices of the Oscars. To be clear, like, this movie, when there was a, you know, this was after the expansion to, you know, somewhere between like 8 to 10 nominees for Best Picture. So it did get in. It probably wouldn't have, sadly, if it was back in the days of 5 nominees. And the only other Oscar it was nominated for, which it did win, was Best Original Song. Not Best Actor, not Best Director.
And
nothing else. Not even some lower tier categories like, say, best sound or, best production design, or, it's ridiculous. And you can only think of one reason as to why that was the case. I know there was a lot going, and there still is, about, hashtag Oscars so white. And I think this film is the ultimate demonstration of that.
We've also talked about Oscars so hetero too. Queer cinema is never given its due either. These movies about marginalized peoples are not considered in the same way that these white hetero experiences that the Academy can relate to are. But yeah, no, John and I both have problems with Oscars. That being said, we're still going to do an Oscar special on this channel.
But this is the thing. We're going to be making our own.
We're going to make our own Oscars. So screw you, Academy. But can we actually talk about relationships? Because I like that they didn't paint Martin Luther King Jr. as perfect, because he did cheat on his wife. And everyone is human, including these inspirational figures. And I really appreciated that this movie painted everyone as human and as making mistakes. And there's that scene between him and his wife that I think was Oscar worthy. That could have easily been an Oscar clip, where she asks him if, do you love me? And he says yes. And she asks, do you love the others? And he has that pregnant pause and says no. And that scene gets me every time, because it reminds me that that no one is perfect, but they still, that actually makes them more relatable. I found King much more relatable in this movie than in a lot of other movies I've seen. And that's what I really appreciated about this movie in particular. Yes. Oh, and Kelly said we can call it the Joskers.
And what's great is there's not going to be any, restrictions on, qualifications on what can be nominated. I've already told Amy that, I'm going to nominate Hamilton and nobody can stop me.
We'll talk about this later, but I also just want to have a best actor category where men and women, trans and non-binary individuals can compete rather than actor and actress. They do the same job. Anyway, but so I think that's what I really appreciated, is that the humanity of all of the characters. We also saw John Lewis kind of getting a little frustrated with one of his fellow organizers. And so we do see these people as people, and they're done. They're so freaking done. And I would be too. They've been fighting for so long, and it feels like they're not getting anywhere. And that frustration really shows in this movie.
And I just want to say real quick, while we're talking about characters and actors, I want to call out Coleman Domingo as Ralph Abernathy, who is the one who's standing next to Martin Luther King Jr. in this picture, the one he has the conversation with in the jail cell. Coleman Domingo is an absolute amazing actor, and for anybody who's seen Fear the Walking Dead, he has a part in that. He is absolutely phenomenal. That show has not always been the strongest show in the world, but he's been awesome throughout the entire thing. So I just wanted to point him out. He's always a lot of fun to watch. But it's such a phenomenal cast all around. And I was saying this earlier, it was amazing to see John Lewis as a character in this, because obviously he would be a character in this because he figured in majorly in the event, but it again brings you back to the mindset of this wasn't that long ago. We like to pretend like it was. Civil rights is often, there's this whole thing in the US about, we like to think it was 100 years ago or something, and it was not very long ago. And as we were saying, that pendulum swings, back and forth. And I love the conversation between him and King in the car. what I love about that scene is you see how he's inspired by King, in one moment, and here he is, and he's having this conversation with King, sort of propelling him on. But you see that sort of that the generational teachings of King inspired him, and how many people did John Lewis inspire throughout his life, and hopefully that continues to be moved forward. So it was great seeing him in this, and can I just say, like, there was absolutely not enough Tessa Thompson, but there never is. She was great, and just so many wonderful performers in this, and it's one of the things that I liked about watching this a second time, even though it's been years since I saw it the first time, but I was able to keep a handle on, because it's such a big ensemble cast, and I think it was easier for me to keep track of everybody this time around. But I mean, did you guys have any favorite performers?
I mean, Oprah.
Yeah.
McQueen. I mean, everyone killed it, but I remember in the theaters, I knew that Oprah was going to be in it, but wow. I mean, I'm so used to seeing her being like, and you get a card, and doing interviews, but this was such a gripping, dramatic performance by her. And it was really great to see that she has some range, which I'm going to have to search something because I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. I think she was also in a movie where I saw her and I thought, wow, she actually can really act. Why does she not act in more things? Give me 1 second.
Was it The Color Purple?
It was The Color Purple.
Yeah.
Yes. I was searching it right now because I read the novel before I saw the movie. And it's a lot. But yes, so yeah, The Color Purple was where I first saw her and was like, wow, she can really freaking act. But this she had a relatively small part, but dang, she acted every second out of it.
Do you know why she doesn't do it more often?
Because she's busy?
Because she doesn't have to.
That's true. She had plenty of money.
Yeah, she can pick the stuff that she wants to be a part of.
Also, Magazine does a lot of lists of the best like podcasts and channels out there. So, Magazine, pay attention to us, please.
I'm sure that'll get us somewhere.
Yeah. So, Oprah's a fan of the channel, don't you know, John?
Except for the people who give us thumbs down. There are a few, but yeah.
Well, that means we've made it if there are consistently people that take their time to feed the YouTube algorithm. Thank you for being you, people who give us thumbs down.
Sorry, Geaullie, go ahead.
Well, I really like the performance of the grandfather of Jimmy Lee Jackson.
Yeah.
That was an ugly cry part when he was in the coroner's office looking at the body of his grandson, and then having that conversation about like that he promised that Jimmy Lee Jackson promised his grandfather that he could vote before he died, and he was like 82 at that moment, and yeah, it was like that was an ugly cry moment. It's like I'm almost crying now to see that how what he lost, and that he still believed in the cause even after his grandson died. It's very, very sad, but it's also that you see at the end of the movie that you see the text, the text in this on the screen, that he was the first person in his family to register to vote. after the Voting Rights Act of 65. And that was, I was so happy that he still got the chance to vote. But yeah.
But it's sad that.
Yeah.
Also, I've got to shout out my dad's in the chat, and yeah, this is my Lincoln Elementary shirt hoodie. I love you, Dad.
Hi, Amy's dad.
Hello, Amy's dad.
Thank you for raising such an awesome person.
You're sweet.
So it's 7:58. It's close enough to the midway point. Let's get the usual stuff out of the way, and then we did promise an announcement. But
yes, and this is the mid-roll, which means it comes in the middle. Stick around. We have more stuff. Don't you turn that dial. You know, I always got to do it, John.
So next week we're having AK come on the channel, which is going to be just freaking awesome. We can't wait. And we're going to be talking about a film which I've never seen and Amy's never seen. It's a television film from the 70s called The Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. So that's going to be fun. It's actually going to be fitting to be doing a film that neither of us have ever seen before, and we will tell you in just a second why. But Amy, what do you got coming up?
So yeah, I've got a lot of content coming up. I just released, as of an hour ago, my latest Avatar content. We talked about the Air Nation. I had on our good friend Steven Stark over at Here Be Dragons, and also our good friend Yogi and Christina, of course, Lady Triple. So we had a really good time talking about it. So if you're an Avatar fan, I have 2 videos out so far about Avatar, and I also have it in podcast form. So if you want to listen for your listening pleasure, you can find me on Anchor and on Podbean. I'm now also on Spotify and on Google Play. So hopefully I will be on Apple Podcasts soon. I'm working on that. But yes, what I have coming up, I don't know what the next thing is going to be, but I have like a group of things that will come next. But so I'm just going to leave it as quick as I can, which, you know, it's like, haha, what is that for me? But I'm going to have Yogi on for my 4th episode of Buddy Banter. I just did my 3rd with Low the Links, where I have a friend on to talk about a topic of their choice. This buddy over here was the first one I bantered with, and we had a really good time. So I look forward to keep doing that. That's the only time I go live on my channel, and it's once a month. So if you subscribe to my channel, hit that little bell so you'll know when I'm going live. And yeah, I have a lot of his Song of Ice and Fire, his Dark Materials, Avatar: Last Airbender, The Witcher, and I'm sorry, have you heard of the Poppy War? I've got also. Oh my God! You made a banner. This book. I have so much content coming up. Please, I'm not going to get into specifics. Please just subscribe to my channel, subscribe to my podcast, follow my blog, and follow me on Twitter. I'm Amy Poehler, because I poll you. I want to know, what are your thoughts? So at Amy Blackfire is my Twitter. You'll find the link in the description. I'm done.
I couldn't resist. Sorry.
I can't believe you got that. You made that banner so quickly.
But I did it before you even said it.
Yeah, you can. Anytime I pick up the Poppy War, we can call that a drinking game.
Because, well, I knew it was coming, and like I finished typing it, and then I saw you starting to lift it up.
It was coming. It was coming.
Okay, Geaullie, so what do you have coming up on your channel?
I am trying to organize another panel of the Knights Queen's Court. I hope I can make an announcement about that pretty soon. That's kind of it, I think. So yeah.
You're gonna talk about the Night's Watch, correct?
I was planning to do the Night's Watch, yeah. So yeah, I will announce it on Twitter when I have a date and guests for that topic. So
yes, please follow Geaullie on Twitter.
Yeah.
And so now it's time for the big announcement. Some of you actually might not be thrilled about this, but I'm hoping that we'll be met with some positivity. So I've been thinking for a while before Amy actually even agreed to come on as co-host, because we had talked about something like this for a long while, even before that. It's one of the things about this format of doing a live stream is that there's a very sort of performance-based presentation of the whole thing. And one of the things that I had wanted to do with Amy for a while was to have more laid-back conversations. And so very early on, her and I speculated about the idea of doing a podcast. Unfortunately, the last thing I think I needed to do was start a podcast in addition to doing weekly live streams. So after much discussion, Amy and I have decided to take Cinematic Realms into the podcast realm. At first, we were going to do this by just basically making audio versions of our weekly show, but we're actually changing things up a bit. There will still be video versions of our show, but we are going to be basically recording video podcasts and making them available in both formats. So we will not be going live anymore each week. We feel that we want to do this. I think it'll take a lot of pressure off and also enable us to have maybe some different kinds of conversations and just really highlight our friendship and the banter we like to have and all that stuff. So next week we are still going to be doing a live stream, but it will be our final live stream. Not necessarily for good. There might be an occasion where we want to go live, but for the most part we will be moving on to a new format and doing it as a podcast. So
some of this is for our own energy levels as well, and scheduling. John does not have a weekend. He does this, and then he does Here Be Dragons every Sunday night. So, and I would have been having to, because those of you that know, I'm a PhD student. I teach and I go to class and study and research. And so I've been having to watch the movies Friday night last minute, and it would be nice to have to be able to basically watch the movies on the weekend and record on a weekday. And to have my Saturday nights back would be very lovely. So yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of, I've known that something was going to have to change because nothing's going to get in the way of me doing Here Be Dragons, because I absolutely adore Stephen and Nessie with all my heart, and it's just part of who I am. But something had to give, so this is basically, so part of that is just so I can have something of my weekend, and also, to be honest, it's just something different. I think I know that, like I said, from long back, I had been talking with Amy about our earliest conversations were that we were going to do a Keira Knightley podcast.
Yes, that was surprise. That was our first idea. You might know we're a little obsessed with her. We are the Knights of Keira. Check us out on Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. So, yes,
Stephen, I will kill you if you do that. Okay,
don't not fire
don't
him.
Even think about that.
But no, I think another reason that this is good is we're going to get a community kind of supporters outside of YouTube. I know a lot of people that don't do YouTube live streams or even YouTube videos. They only do podcasts. So we're hoping this will bring some more people into the Cinematic Realms family, and that it will also allow us to give you all a good show that you can listen to on your own time. And if you didn't catch it, there won't be any live for you to miss out on. So it's like, darn, I didn't catch it live. Well, you're going to catch it right, on your own time, at your own pace.
And this does give me a lot of a lot of opportunity to kind of control the quality also of what we'll be doing. I've been looking into a new program to use for actually recording all the video and audio. And since you all know I have an affinity for editing, I'll actually be able to put these together myself. So the quality output, I think, will be improved. And honestly, I think both Amy and I are very excited about getting to have more laid back conversations with it, because I think you convey yourself very differently when you're speaking in front of a live audience versus when it's a couple friends sitting down for a chat, which then you can share with people.
Yeah, and if we have, like we have right now, a friend that's in Europe, we can do it at a time when they don't have to stay up until 3 a.m. to talk to us. So
yeah, really sorry you caught us on the tail end of this, Geaullie.
Yeah, Geaullie, just a couple weeks from now, you could have been doing this way earlier. You're a trooper, Geaullie.
Of course, anything. But fuck, that is, yes. That would have been nice.
Really sorry. No, but yeah, and I think this is going to give us the opportunity to do a lot of different stuff that we don't necessarily, I think we've tried to relax the format a little bit over the past couple weeks, but I think there's something about being in front of a live audience that you feel the tendency to, it starts and you want to start talking about, the topic in question, like right away in a very professional and, let's hit this point and this point. And really what I want the podcast to be is basically me and Amy and, whatever guests we may have on to just be sort of goofing around and having a fun conversation. And yeah, and so I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We do apologize if anybody is let down by this. We've had such enormous fun doing these live streams with you every week. But it's, it's moving on to a new chapter and also like protecting our mental health. So.
And our time management. I want weekends. I miss them.
That is so understandable. Also, more time for Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes, and for my own channel. I'm also like ramping up my own channel, so I'm putting out like 3 to 4 episodes of content on my channel from like 4 to 5 different fandoms. So I need to focus on my own brand as well. The hashtag Amy Blackfire brand is also important. So
now there will be a lot of cool different stuff we'll put into this. I'm very much
Yogi, you just missed a big announcement, you loser.
I'm
just kidding. I love you.
But I like the idea that I think we're also going to branch out to do some different kinds of conversations as well. I know that we briefly talked about doing sort of more character analysis and sort of focusing on specific elements rather than just doing a film each week. We can mix it up a bit.
We're hoping to do theme studies or one character. So.
Is that an excuse just to do character analysis on all of Keira Knightley's
Not at all.
Maybe.
Not at
all. So yeah, we'll be going in many different directions, with some of which might be predictable, some of them might not be. So anyway, that's the announcement. We are shifting over to podcast form. I want to stress again that you will still be able to find videos released each week, because it won't just be an audio podcast. We will have.
Don't worry, you'll still get to see this beautiful face every week. By that I mean John's. So don't worry about it.
Nobody's coming here for that.
They are coming for your beard, though.
They are.
They are.
I hope you guys are happy this week.
Yeah. Good job. We're proud of you.
So yeah, that's it. And yeah,
the next chapter of Cinematic Realms.
Yeah, we're both really excited. So yeah, that's that. And now Amy can go ahead and promote the hell out of this on Twitter, which I know she's looking forward to. Um,
I don't like to keep secrets for too long, John.
So okay. So we got that out of the way. So we can go back into the film now, I guess. We talked a little bit about, and God, I know I'm gonna butcher his name. And anybody else want to try try the actor's name who plays Martin Luther King Jr., so I'm not the first person to butcher it. His first name is David.
Well,
I assume you mean the last name.
Yeah.
Oyelowo?
That sounds good enough for me.
Don't at me, internet.
He's like.
By the way, you had one more plug, John.
That's right. Sorry, I didn't. Well, we mentioned that I wasn't going to allow Steven to fire me.
Jay Dead, redhead. Sorry, I'm just kidding. It's Jaded Redhead.
Yeah. So Steven's already taking care of it for me. Tomorrow on Here Be Dragons, we're going to be
6 p.m. Eastern.
Talking WandaVision at 6 p.m. Eastern, and we're going to have Jay Dead Redhead on to talk about it, which is the way I'm going to introduce her, like on every time she's on our channel too. Yeah, so we'll be talking about episodes 4, 5, and 6 of that, which it's so funny because the last time we discussed WandaVision over on Here Be Dragons, we were all like, we have all these questions and are they going to be answered? And we're speculating and all these things. And what do you know? A lot of those questions were answered in the very next episode. And now we have a slew of different questions. So definitely tune in. Yes, I know we all suck, but I love you too, Miss Dead Redhead. And I do want to say that Kelly is going to be back on Cinematic Realms in the new podcast form. To talk about the second X-Men film in a couple of weeks.
She's also going to be on Through the Moon Door, Yogi's podcast / channel as well, to talk about boats, ships, and A Song of Ice and Fire.
And since we're going to be widening the scope of what we talk about in each episode, I'll go ahead and when we have her on, I'll take the time to tease her about how great she thinks the film The New World is, and how now, all the accuracy and all that stuff. But we'll talk about that another time. Okay, let's dive back into the film. We were talking about, the incredible acting performance of, let me give it a shot, David Oyelowo. Okay, I'm going to get canceled.
David O.
Yeah. I'm obviously canceled, but he's an incredible actor, and this performance was absolutely insane. Like every time he was, he was great both during the big speeches and also in those quieter moments, especially as you were saying, Amy, those scenes between him and his wife were just like so powerful. But then as he was giving those different speeches, and especially when you hear him talking at the end of the film, just complete chills down my spine. So again, I'm gonna rag on the Oscars for not nominating him for Best Actor because it's ridiculous. But and for any Star Wars Rebels fans, he actually voiced Agent Callus on that show. So there's a Star Wars connection, which I always like to point out. But
yeah, I like the performance of David Oyelowo. I'm just trying.
Better than me.
He was a convincing Martin Luther King Jr. He really brought the energy to the speeches that Dr. Martin Luther King had as well. So yeah, he was a good good casting decision. That, he's a good actor. Again, David Oyelowo. I think that is how you pronounce it.
Yeah, we're just going to leave it to you, Geaullie. I think you've come closer than either me or Amy, so. But
I have no idea.
No, I really loved those scenes with him and Tom Wilkinson, who played LBJ. Just, the way he stands up to him, and he's, no matter what LBJ is saying, the way he says it cannot wait, and really being forceful. It's an incredible performance, the way he interacts with all these different characters throughout the film. And I love his quieter moments. I mentioned the scene in the jail cell before, these sort of moments of quiet, reflection, and then the way he just sort of, they're having a deep conversation, and then he turns, he says, "This cell is probably bugged," and just and the character played by Coleman Domingo probably is. But yeah, it's.
Yeah, the small J. Edgar Hoover kind of cameo was interesting too. This kind of reminder that the FBI was seeing the civil rights movement as a terrorist movement, essentially. I mean, it was really startling. The more that I learn about the history of the FBI, and especially J. Edgar Hoover, who was a gay man who had internalized homophobia, who hated black people. I mean, wow, is he a pill to swallow? And I really liked that one scene where he was talking to LBJ in the Oval Office. It really showed how J. Edgar Hoover was really out to get these people out of a hatred that he really bore deeply in his black, empty soul.
Yeah. And I have to say, one of the most striking moments of the film, it's like, and we see LBJ throughout the course of this film, and he doesn't present as a very, even earlier on the film, he's very sort of closed-minded and focused on his own agenda without much care for for the actual fight that that's MLK and all and everybody else is putting on. But he presents himself sort of as like a pragmatist who's trying to juggle all these different things. But then there's that stark moment towards the end of the film where he's talking to Wallace, and the way he sort of coldly uses the N-word, why don't you just
let them vote?
Let them vote. It's like, it just shows him in such, it's disgusting. It's just, and it reflects on, even in modern times, people who present themselves as being like allies to the cause, and it's not realizing how bigoted they themselves are, and he's pushed to take the actions that he takes through political pressure and not through any actual moral call to do what's right, but because he doesn't want to go down in the history books as as someone like Wallace.
I do think that the representation of LBJ in this was more negative than we normally see. We do know from his personal writings that he was not, I mean, he's not as bad of a racist as the others, is like, not what I'm trying to say here. But like I said, his first job was, I think Monaro kind of puts it well. He was a little bit of a fake ally, and that he kind of did do and say the right things. But also at the same time, he was not perfect. He did grow up in very poor in the rolling hills of Texas. And he did have, I think, a bit of a if anything, he either disregarded it or had a white savior complex, and neither is really great.
Yeah.
But there have been better representations of him, and this is certainly a more negative one, and I think it's kind of somewhere in between. But I did appreciate this representation of him as a foil to Martin Luther King Jr., which, you know, he was constantly. And I actually, what I really like about this movie is King talks about how we're not necessarily trying to change the minds, you know, change the views of all white people. It's one white man, and that is the man in the Oval Office. And I think that was a brilliant approach, because changing things through legislation was the way to go. And, you know, LBJ, he wasn't just the president, he was known as the master of the Senate. He had served in the Senate for so many years, and he knew everyone there. He knew how to whip the votes. And so I think that was a brilliant strategy on the part of King as represented in this movie.
Yeah. I think when you have so many, I think when you have so many sort of differing portrayals of him, it's, you know, more positive, and this kind of balances that. It might be nicer to get a more balanced portrayal, but I think in a way, seeing all these different perspectives of real historical figures in a way balances it out, so that if you see him portrayed one way in this and then another way in that, and maybe you get closer to the truth by taking in a variety of different portrayals. But
I like that they portrayed him that way, because he is a politician. He was the president of the United States. You have to have a sort of, you know, a form of grandeur and narcissism, maybe, to become a politician in that way, and to get to the presidency. It's not easy to get to the presidency, even though, you know, some people might. Well, it is not as it is a politician, and then they showed him as a politician, and I like that, because a lot of people who get into politics do that for themselves and not for others. They want power, they want recognition, and I like that they showed him like that, because that is in a sense what he was. He was a politician.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I really like Tom Wilkinson as an actor.
Oh yes.
So, you know, seeing less than admirable, you know, traits from him, it's like, no, Tom Wilkinson, don't say that.
Yeah, I had that thing a bit with Tim Roth.
Oh my God, Tim Roth.
Like I love him as an actor. Like I love that. I love him like in Pulp Fiction and all that stuff. And then to see him be such a nasty racist, and he did a good job, because he was despicable in the movie. But you know, it is an actor that I saw him in a lot of movies, and I really liked that actor. So yeah.
Yeah, the first time I saw him in anything actually was in the film Rob Roy, and he was an abysmal person in that film. So I like it. It's when I see him, you know, being a really nasty person, I'm like, you know, he's really good at it.
Yeah.
But I also, you know, have liked him occasionally when he plays, you know, somewhat nicer characters, and he's such a great actor that it's, you know, I want him to be the good guy, but he's so good at playing these loathsome people.
Yeah.
Which actually, you know, it's funny how I keep going back to our Tarantino stream, but when he played that part in The Hateful Eight, it was sort of a joy seeing him play sort of the goofy, fun role for most of that film, and then on a you know, and in the snap of the finger, he turns around and he's, you know, this despicable person, dropping the fake accent and all that. And he was definitely a lot of fun in that film. But yeah, he did a great job. It's just the kind of playing the kind of guy that you just want to vomit, you know, when he speaks. So
Yeah, that was a hateful dude.
I was really impressed, as I always am, though, by Martin Sheen's performance. I believe that's his name.
Yeah.
That's the one guy that I recognized automatically because, oh my God, it's President Bartlett from West Wing. His role was interesting in that the first part, kind of the first, like the introduction to him, he came off as not sympathetic at all to the cause and kind of a little bit like, well, there's not much I can do. And then he kind of started, he later, it kind of showed that he was a little bit more understanding about, you know, where the kind of the heart of the law and equality really lies and not where the actual written word of the law is, because we do have these so-called Jim Crow laws in the South that were, you know, this is why we needed federal legislation, because the states could do what they wanted, and because of that you could have from one state to another people of color can be completely changed.
Pat are calling Amy out.
Look,
Martin
I
Sheen,
was
is that
double
his name?
checking because sometimes I accidentally reference his son, and I wanted to make sure I got his first name right. And
That doesn't make it better, Amy.
Well, you know what? You guys, there's nothing wrong with being old or young. You guys are age shaming me, and how dare you?
I
love the West Wing. I love the 90s. You all are mean to me.
I do want to say, like, it's, and Martin Sheen has a very small role in this film, so pardon me for taking time out, but I was going on before about how sort of my view when I was younger of the Civil War, and, you know, the whole conflict was very much shaped by you know, the films and different media that I watched when I was younger. And as much as I take all that with a grain of salt now, as you need to, because those perspectives are skewed, I do want to call out one of the first things that I saw him in, which was in the 1993 film Gettysburg, where he actually plays Robert E. Lee. And damn it, as much as, you know, it kind of enrages me, he makes Robert E. Lee extremely compelling to watch. And he's such a phenomenal actor in the way he's able to do that. And then, of course, he was in The West Wing, and I, you know, of course, fell in love with President Bartlett. So pretty much any time that I see him in anything, it just automatically brings a smile to my face. So I'm glad that he was on sort of, you know, at first he does look kind of like, as you were saying, like, oh, I can't do much about that. But, you know, but then when he's shown when he could use the law to, you know, to do the right thing, he does. So, but, yeah, I'm trying to think. Sometimes this is another reason, folks, why I can't wait to go to podcast, because I get it's because I'm finding that we want to go with an outline less and less. The unfortunate downside of that is sometimes I reach a lull where I'm not sure where to go next.
And we could just do that post editing. I could literally be like, John, I have nothing to say. You fix this in editing, okay? We could just do that. I could just sit there and be like, I can't remember things. Oh well.
I wanted to also to highlight the acting of Charity Jordan, who played the mother of Jimmy Lee Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
I was really impressed by her acting, especially when, like, in that diner, seeing her son die, and then at the funeral when Dr. Martin Luther King was speaking, and the way she sat there, it was real believable because she looked out of it there at the funeral, and it was a heartbreaking thing to see the mom who's watched her son die, who watched her father being beaten, and then her at the funeral just totally out of it. I really liked her performance, because she made it believable. Sometimes you have actors that it's just, yeah, I know you're hurting stuff, but with her, I was like, I was it hit me right in the feels. It was a very good performance. I think a lot of the actors were very good. So, but yeah, like that kind of hit me. Um, uh, it hit me hard, and it was so believable.
The scene in the diner too, where he's like, where her son is saying, "Just read the menu, right? Just read the menu." That role reversal of the child taking care, even the adult child taking care of the parent, freaking breaks my heart.
Mhm.
They looked so scared, and of course they should be. I mean, and obviously the end of that scene proves why they should be scared.
Yeah.
And it's that all three of the actors, but especially her, really acted the crap out of that scene, and it really showed how this constant fear of violence, and the violence itself is obviously
Mhm.
awful and terrible, but even just the threat and the fear of it alone makes people of color, um, you know,
Yeah.
constantly live in fear, especially during this time of unrest. And I don't say unrest as in, I hate to use that word because it makes it sound like I'm saying, oh, these people of color are causing unrest. No, it's the KKK and the white supremacists that are causing it. They're not allowing this important social movement to take its peaceful course.
Mhm.
They're the ones that incite the violence. It's
Yeah.
not the legitimate protesters that do. And this is once again so unfortunately apt to our current time,
Mhm.
especially this last year, meaning 2020, where we had, an upsurge in America of protests against people of color being shot by the police, which is just has such a long history, and we see it here in this movie.
Mhm.
This is just another example. There's Emmett Till is before that, which was shown in Lovecraft Country. You know, it, innumerable names of
Mhm.
lives lost.
Yeah. And also, what I found interesting with this movement in Selma, was that it was spearheaded by young people, because they saw the older generation was too afraid to protest, and it was spearheaded by the young people there. And you see that in the movie, you see the old people are terrified, um, because of what they have been exposed to with the in Selma. And um, I watched a couple of documentaries about it as well, and that was a quote that came back the whole time. The older generation there was scared. The white men, like, um, they sent someone there uh, from Martin Luther King's organization. They sent someone there, and he came back with the phrase, "The white people are too mean, and the black people are too scared." So that, yeah, I you see that fear a lot the in the older people in the movie, and it is quite historic accuracy. It's good to see. Well, it's not good to see. You know what I mean. It's the history, how it's portrayed there. It was a good movie.
I also one scene that I wanted to mention was that march where Martin Luther King did, they tried again at the bridge. And then that dramatic moment where he stops and they bend down to pray. And I actually am a religious person, but I'm Buddhist, so I'm not Western religious. And so that still touched me. They were asking for protection from their God. And he got up and he kind of looked back and he looked forward and he knew in his gut it wasn't right. And that moment is very dramatic for me. And I thought that it was well acted, but also when he turns around and he goes through, people kind of make way so that he can walk. And you'll notice, and I didn't notice it the first time because I did see this in theaters. This was my first rewatch, and I'm going to watch it many more times. This is a great movie, but it takes about 10 kind of rows deep before everyone starts to turn. Right. So he's starting to walk. And even then people don't automatically turn to leave because everyone is there for this march and for this purpose. And they're surprised, King is not usually one to back down, but he had a bad feeling. And he tells that to them later when they were asking him what was up with that.
Yeah. And he says he'd rather people, hate him as opposed to putting anyone, in danger. So, what's really powerful also about that moment is, especially that moment after they've kneeled down to pray and he stands back up. It's called back to, when he's talking about, what happens when a man stands up. And I have to applaud the people who worked on the trailer for this film, because I watched it prior to going back to the film, and that line is cut against that moment in the film. It's how the trailer ends, and it's just brilliant. It's the whole sequence just sort of sends chills down your spine, and to the point where when it reaches that moment, unless you're familiar with every beat of the story, when he actually does turn around, it's rather shocking.
Yeah.
And
my mom and I went because we saw the trailer and we thought it was good. And so it was interesting to see that moment where you thought he was going to stand up. They're going to move. They're going to do it. Right. Even, and then he turns around. So, I do know about the March on Edmund Pettus Bridge, but I don't know the exact details. I have no idea about historical inaccuracy or anything. But I certainly didn't know enough details to expect that if this is exactly how it went down. And so that's what made it so dramatic for me.
It was dubbed Turnaround Tuesday. Because you had the first march contained Bloody Sunday. And then you had Turnaround Tuesday was the second march. And then the third one, they got the protection. So they went. But yeah. It was quite a big thing that he turned around. So yeah, they dubbed it Turnaround Tuesday, and I also didn't know a lot about it before I started studying history. It was not a thing that you learn about in great detail in like high school stuff. So. Yeah, I was like, it was a powerful moment in that movie that he turned around, and I think they did a good job with that. I have a problem with historical inaccuracies in movies, and I have
not heard this, Geaullie.
I was not annoyed during this movie. I was like, yeah, they did a good portrayal of the historical events, and also good that they did the timeline correct, like the bombing of the church and the death of those children. Yeah, it was like that is quite a scene to come into a movie, like you're like just in the movie, and then you get that, like children getting blown up. Like, what?
Yeah, I didn't talk about that earlier, but like when I turned on the movie today, like after about 2 seconds of them walking down the stairs, I was like, oh shit, that's right. Now I remember how this film opens. But when I saw it for the first time several years ago, that moment just like stunned me into complete silence. It is one hell of a way to start off a movie.
Yeah. When I watched it in theaters with my mom next to me, we saw 4 girls in their Sunday best going down the stairs, and we both did this automatically. We knew what was about to happen, because it's one of the many examples of domestic terrorism, really, in America, where white supremacists, bomb historically black places. And this is a church. This is a place of sanctuary for this community. And it just, I remember my mom, both, and I cringing and kind of hiding our eyes. That, more than the movie, the way that we reacted, I think, really sticks into my brain. And that the callousness with which white supremacists, do these things, that they don't care. Children, whatever. They see it as, a necessary fatality, because they don't even see them as people. So it's not even really a fatality to them. And also, I think the turning around to get back to that, to me, that really also represented this idea that King knew when to stand up and fight, and he knew when to stand down for the betterment of everyone, for the health of everyone, and for the safety of everyone. And I think that is what a leader needs. Just a leader that's going to, take the sword and go charge every single time into battle. That's not leadership. It's knowing when to fight and knowing when to say, okay, we're going to try this again in a couple of days.
No. Well, Martin Luther King was a good strategist. He knew how to get the attention of the media. He knew how important it was to show, like, the white people in the country, how terrible they are treated. It's the whole getting arrested for the movement, to see black people really standing up and fighting. And also what he did with, he knew that when children get beaten, that people will have an opinion about that. So he was good at looking for where could you have that confrontation, where would you have the sheriff that will beat the crap out of them instead of handling them with dignity. So they chose Selma, also because of the sheriff, what is he called, Jim Clark, because he knew that those images would move a lot of people. And he was non-violent, but he knew how to use the violence that was perpetrated against them to change the minds of people. And so
I think the call to clergy also was important. This idea of, if you're gonna believe in God and that we're all God's children, then we're all God's children. I mean, it's right there, right? And so, the white people that were a part of civil rights movement tended to be those who were active in more liberal and accepting churches. And this is when religion can be used for good. And I did appreciate that part of the movie. It is obviously tragic that they were thinking they were being stewards of their Lord and doing the right thing, and then to be treated in such a way was really impactful, I think, in the movie, and also showed how standing up for the right thing, no matter your color, can subject you to violence, because white supremacy is all about keeping white men at the top, almost as if it's patriarchal, a drink.
I'm out of.
Are you out of OJ? Now. I knew it, John. You always get out of it too early.
I still have that.
But it is inherently patriarchal white supremacy. I'm not at all excusing the white women who have been a part of discrimination, because especially Geaullie, you were on with me and Nessie and Bleep the Patriarchy. We were talking about this during the suffragette movement, that there were white women who didn't want women to get the vote because black women might also get it. So it's that is also a part of it, though, and that there was this kind of idea of, oh, white women, at least you're not black, so let's keep the way it is for the betterment of white men. So there was this constant, and especially poor white people were encouraged to be more racist because, well, you might be poor, but at least you're not black. That's kind of what I've seen. So it really shows kind of the way that that this kind of narrative can drive people to hate when they don't even know people of color, right? It was so segregated at the time, and it's still kind of segregated now. I'm currently in Chicago. There are certain neighborhoods, there's not a white person to be seen. There are certain neighborhoods, there's not a black person to be seen. Segregation is not done. We were talking about civil rights is not over. That we see that in housing. We see that in schooling, People are still very segregated as well. And so there was not this mixing that we do see in the march. We do in the movie, we do see black and white people together marching. And, for many white people, that might have been the first time they were really interacting for a long time with people of color, because it was so segregated. And like I said, still is today. That was a long tirade. I apologize.
Yeah, but it's also, Lyndon
Baines Johnson.
Yeah, that one.
You can call him LBJ. Okay. You guys are on an initial name basis, so.
Okay. Well, I forgot what I wanted to say. I'm so stupid. Yeah, no, totally lost it. Sorry.
Thank you, AK. I've got the green light to continue my tirades. Well, I'm sure you'll think of it again, Geaullie.
Yeah, probably after the stream, when it's it's late. Just it's late. I'm not at my best anymore.
I want to say that it's another example of how time shifts your perspective. It was pretty much impossible for me to watch that sequence on the bridge on Bloody Sunday without thinking of the Capitol attack, and it's just again, as I was saying earlier, it's frustrating to see that those sort of images of history, coming back around, and when this is a quote unquote period film, but not that far ago of a period. So
yeah, it really feels very
also,
close.
That how they the civil rights movement and the movement of Martin Luther King kept the non-violence up, and then you have the people who stormed the Capitol who are also saying, yeah, we're protesting and all that stuff. It's like, no, you're not. You're committing violence. You're committing terror, and that is not okay. You still see that they get away with it, as opposed to the protest earlier in the summer.
They erected a noose. Like they erected like a hanging grounds outside of the Capitol for Nancy Pelosi or Mike Pence. Like, what the hell?
They just wanted to lynch some people.
MLK says something in this film to Johnson when he's saying that about, racial injustice, and because, white officials are elected who will, who won't punish, white, criminals, and because, only white people are voting, and how can you not feel that today of all days, um, with the acquittal of our, racist in chief. So
Former, luckily, ex.
yeah,
And we also have, a lot of when there were protests in Ferguson, the cops were like 80 something, 90 something percent white, and the populace was over 60% black. I mean, that's not representative. That's the thing, is there's this idea that, don't worry, these white men specifically, they're going to have your interests in mind. No, they don't know anything about the people of color community. You need, when this representation has been really demonized by certain people as being PC and being, just kind of doing it to look good. But representation is real, and it has real power and real empowerment. And we see that in politicians, electing politicians of color and politicians that are other minorities, such as Jews, and people of other people of other faiths that are not Christian. We do see a difference in governing from them. So to just think that they're going to, just be a kind of a, what's the word I'm looking for? A token, right? That's not really how they work. And there are smart, able, capable people out there of all different backgrounds. And it's not, oh, we're just doing this to diversify. No, we're doing this to better our representation, which is always, everyone is lifted up when we do that.
Yeah. And I like the new progressive movement that ushered in like a lot of people of color and people of other minorities into politics, with the elections in 2018, that the House got taken by the Democrats, and the amount of people of color that came into the House for the first time, and people who of different backgrounds concerning faith, like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, and I think it is a good thing because they can talk about their experience. A lot of white people, and also me, and like, they don't know what it is to be black in the United States. They don't know the fear that you have when you see a cop car, or if you call the police because a family member has a mental breakdown, and they shoot that person instead of helping. And I think that it's good that those voices are heard in politics. So yeah, it is good that they diversify, and I'm all for the progressive movement that is very big in the diversity, not because they're tokens, but because they have real issues that they want to work on. So yeah.
I have just remembered that Amy has to leave at the 2-hour mark. So
you just remembered that?
Yeah, I did. So I'm going to just ask.
We can go like 5 to 10 minutes over the 2-hour mark, but yeah, I have a one of the many reasons that it's good we're going to podcast is I have a friend's game night once a month on Saturday night. And I don't want, and it's hard to get 6 people to all agree on a Saturday night they can do. So,
Amy, I thought you didn't want to tell them the real reason we're making the change.
It's all because of my friend's game night. Blame me, don't at John.
But
I have no problem with keeping it to the 2
yeah, it's like
not a big
3 a.m.
issue
there. So
yeah, almost.
So I'll just ask, do you guys have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I think that it's nice to see a movie with such a big black cast. I love the actors. I loved how those actors, like, they played their roles really good, and um, they made a believable story. And yeah, representation is important. So yeah, I think that it's good that we're finally in a place, maybe, that you can have a lot of black actors and still have a good movie that sells.
Yeah, I think we still have a ways to go in that regard, but it is
Of
nice
course.
when we see examples of that, very much so.
Mhm.
Yeah, and this idea of representation has been on my mind. I'll go ahead and make it even more political, which it all is, with the casting announcement for House of the Dragon, where a bunch of racists are freaking out that a man of color is going to play a fictional character that they pictured as white. And I
Ugh.
just, I
What-
can't.
Was there noise about that?
There might have been a little bit. But it's very frustrating. I know, for people of color, and I'm frustrated, so I can't even imagine the level of frustration of my friends who are people of color, because it's just, pick the person who does the best job, period. And stop anytime that there's a hire, stop calling it a diversity hire, or this kind of giving them extra points for diversity. It just really, it's so frustrating, and it's so great to see a movie like this that has people of color at its center, but we need more movies that have people of color as its center that aren't necessarily about the civil rights movement. Not to say that there shouldn't be more movies about this, because this is a very important part of our history. And today, right, I'm hoping to see many movies in the future about the Black Lives Matter movement. But at the same time, I would love stories about people of color just going through their lives and having normal problems. And it would, and also for them to be in roles that aren't necessarily about, quote unquote, being black. And so that's something that I really appreciate about the casting announcement for Corlys Velaryon and House of the Dragon. I know those in the chat are a fan. Those listening later, we're talking about Game of Thrones stuff.
Yeah.
But this is something that Geaullie and I like rage text each other about, is like this kind of just, well, not necessarily technically WhatsApp, because we're not in the same country and we don't want to pay the international texting fee. So WhatsApping back to each other, but it's just, it's so frustrating to not just enjoy really, talented people that I think are going to embody the character. As long as you embody the character, what does it matter how you look? That's, I've always felt that way.
Here's the thing. It's all imaginary. We're watching people dress up and play act. If you think it's that big of a problem, I have a couple of examples for you. Go watch Hamilton. Go watch, there was a movie a couple of years ago called Mary, Queen of Scots, which had many prominent characters in that film played by actors of different nationalities. You had black actors.
Go watch the
Asian
90s
actors.
Cinderella that just got put up on Disney Plus, where Cinderella's black, the fairy godmother's black, the prince is Asian. Go enjoy. All right? It's a good freaking movie.
Yeah. Also, it's frustrating to see all those racist comments, but also I kind of live for the white tears and stuff. It's like, oh, it's fun.
Right?
It's
Fragility is what I eat for breakfast.
Yeah, it's fun to see them lose their heads. And also, it's nice to know which people are horrible racists like that.
Yeah, it's like whack-a-mole, and they rear their ugly head, and you can see them.
Yeah, and block. And block. And block.
Block. You blocked. You blocked.
Everyone's blocked.
I'm sorry. Patter, you really are in rare form. This is beautiful. Yeah, so I'll just say that I was really happy to revisit this movie. It was impactful when I saw it, but even more so now. And I don't know that I'm entirely happy about the fact of why that is, because we're in because we've been reminded over the past several years that this isn't just something from the past. This is something that's always ever present, and lessons that we need to keep in mind. So on the one hand, that's not so great to be reminded of that, but we need to be reminded of that. And I think this was an extraordinary film, portraying this period of time and also as a call to action for the future. So yeah, I absolutely loved it. And I'll once again do one final tirade on the fact that 2 Oscar nominations, really?
Really, only 2.
Okay.
And I will say, back to just one thing, I promise, and then I won't shut up, but I'll lessen it. The thing about the Cinderella that had the diverse cast, I grew up watching that on VHS, and it changed the way that I saw media. That movie made me realize Cinderella can be whatever color. It doesn't matter. She is a character, fictional character. It can be played by anyone. And Brandy did an amazing job. And Brandy was the shiz at the time. Like, everyone was all about Brandy for like 3 years in the 90s. And so I was like, oh my God, it's Brandy. And Whitney Houston just, oh my God, don't get me started. I think I've decided I'm going to do an episode on my channel just about this movie because I love it so much, because I grew up seeing it and thinking, why does Cinderella have to be white? And if we have these movies and these shows and these novels that are like this, then children growing up right now will realize it really doesn't matter. It's about who is the most talented and who embodies the spirit of the story.
But I have a question, Amy.
Yes?
Were you able to actually enjoy that and understand what was going on as a toddler?
Oh my God, I wasn't that young, you butthole. Get it, John, I'm canceling you from your own channel.
Okay, so so next week we're having AK on for our final live stream, which we will be talking about the film, The Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. We'll also just be goofing around with AK and asking her a bunch of questions and just having a good old time. It'll be a nice celebration for our last live stream, and then I can go ahead and talk about what's coming after that now. And the week after that, we will be pre-recorded for, obviously, because we're doing a podcast. But it's going to be valuable for another reason, because Amy will be out of town that weekend, so we wouldn't have been able to live stream even if we had wanted to. So we are actually going to be doing an introductory podcast, which will be basically a way to allow potential new listeners to get to know us, and we'll talk a bit about what the channel is, or I guess I should just start saying the podcast, what the podcast is, and so it'll just be her and I talking about movies and a bunch of other stuff, and and just goofing around. The week after that, for our first official podcast episode, we're starting all the way at the beginning. We're going to be talking about the Wizard of Oz.
Yes. Flying monkeys, wicked witches of the West, the singing munchkins, which are a little problematic now. We're going to have a great time.
And that's going to be just her and me, because one thing we are going to focus on is, while we will still be having guests, we might not be doing that as often, because we want basically the podcast to be Amy and me, goofing around and just talking about our favorite movies. But that doesn't mean we're cutting down on our guest quota immediately, because we actually have quite a lineup of guests coming up. So you'll still be able to enjoy that, because we're going to have people on, just give you a little sneak peek of what's ahead. We're going to have Christina, Lady Triple, on for Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. We're going to have Miss J. Dead Redhead and
my best friend in the whole world, Jenna,
on for X2, which is the second X-Men film, which I'm going to go on a tirade about how in the marketing they called it X2 X-Men United, even though that subtitle appears nowhere in the film.
No, they're not even that united, honestly.
Yeah. And then we'll save further announcements for a little bit further down the road. But yeah, it's just
we're really excited for this future of John Webster film, and we'll be in your pocket as a podcast if you don't want to do the whole watching on YouTube thing, even though I understand that beard is gorgeous. I get it. And these pigtails, I know you'll miss it. So you can watch on video form. But yeah, we're gonna have a great time. You know that I do the scheduling for this channel. Therefore, we are scheduled already through May. So we have a lot of great stuff coming up, including my birthday stream, which is going to be so much fun on May 22nd. We're going to have a great time. I won't say which movie I picked, but it has to do with China, and I'm very excited.
Take a big wild guess, everybody.
What do we want?
But no, she's also lying because there are actually some entries for June as well. So it's not just May.
I wanted to sound like one of the cool kids who doesn't schedule too far ahead, John, and then you totally messed it up.
Okay, so yeah, coming back next week, we're going to be talking with AK for the final for now live stream, which is not to say that, there might be a special occasion in the future where we might do something, you never know. But yeah, so tune in for that, and we will see you next week. Hope you all have an absolutely wonderful. Kelly is asking for a date on X2 right now to make things easier for everybody. For the people we already have lined up, we're kind of planning to just record on Saturday. If that's what works for our guests, and then once we get past the people that we already set up dates for, we'll then move to recording on other days. But yeah, Kelly,
this is another good thing about doing the podcast. If people cannot do a certain day, we can accommodate our guests.
Yeah, and so if you've already got marked down for Saturday, we can definitely keep that, and and we'll just keep which Saturday? Okay,
we'll message you, Kelly.
Yeah. I thought we already had this figured out, but apparently
oh my God, Potter, I know you're a troll, but I can't with you right now.
No, oh my God, no.
All right, time frame. It's going to be in March. I think it's like March 20. Oh, geez. We're doing this all live. Another good thing about being a podcast, I think it's March 20th or 27th, right, J-Dubs?
I can look it up right now. March 20th.
Okay, March 20th. There you go, Kelly. Now you can get off my backs. You get off our backs about that then.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. And oh my God. See, I'm telling you, this is going to be so much fun because that's going to be the kind of stuff we're just going to be goofing around. I'm going to troll Kelly so hard.
And yes, we are doing the Little Mermaid on the 27th with Kate and some guy named Bron Steries.
Damn it, Kate! I said I was saving stuff for future.
Too bad. She already spoiled. She already content previewed it, John.
Spoiled. It's spoiled.
Content preview. We're gonna do a whole episode where we just fight about this. It's gonna be great.
It's content preview.
Okay. All right. Amy has to go. All right.
So I do have to go. Gosh, John.
So we're going to wrap things up. Thank you all for tuning in. Hope you have a wonderful night, and be sure to tune in tomorrow for. Oh wait, what am I doing? I said all the stuff about the channel. Amy, real quick, say again what you have coming up.
I'm not going to do what I have coming up. I'm just going to say follow all my stuff because I have a lot of things coming up, and we don't have. It's a lot of stuff. So just please follow all my things. Like I said, I do Song of Ice and Fire, His Dark Materials, The Witcher, Avatar: Last Airbender, and once again, have you heard the good word, the Poppy War? Yes, that's what I've got. I've got too much stuff coming up, and I also have my next episode of Buddy Banter with Yogi over at Through the Moon Door. We're going to have a good time. We have chosen a topic. It might change, but I'm going to say it anyway. We're going to talk about Kung Fu Panda. It's going to be fun.
Nice. I've never seen that.
What?
Why do I keep doing this to myself? I shouldn't tell you stuff that I haven't seen because you always freak out. Geaullie, once more, what are you working on?
I'm planning a live stream. Hope I can announce a date soon for my next live stream. It's probably going to be about Night's Watch, and I'm looking forward to it. So.
And if you follow her on Twitter, you'll know. And if you're not a Twitter person, then subscribe to her and hit that little notification bell, and then you'll know when she's going live. At All Hail the Night's Queen. You know, I'm always plugging, even if it's not my own channel.
It's fun. It's like you're the hand of the queen, so you know.
Oh, Kelly, it's coming. Don't you worry. It's coming. Because I've had the time of my life watching this movie a bajillion times. I love Dirty Dancing. It's on the schedule. Don't you worry.
It came out in
literally,
the year
Kelly
of my...
texted me and said, John has not seen Dirty Dancing, and I put it on the schedule 2 minutes after she texted me that. Do not worry about it.
That movie came out in the year I was born.
And that was and that was, of course, when we also had the conversation about that we had to we had to settle on which Wheats would be John Wheats and which Wheats would be Amy Wheats.
We're gonna trade off. We'll each pick. We'll each pick. There will be like basically once a month. There will be one movie we both like, and then after that, we'll just kind of switch off.
And one more time, because this is extremely important. Follow the Knights of Kira. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. So yeah. And
I owe it all to you. I'm sorry. Nobody puts baby in a corner.
Okay.
Sorry. We're done.
I think that wraps us up for today. We will see you all next week. Have a wonderful night. And once more, tune in tomorrow to Here Be Dragons. Good night.